The Exalathians were once a peaceful race, known for their calm and gentle nature. Their planet, Exalath, was covered with beautiful blue oceans and lush green forests. The Exalathians loved their world and took great care of it. They had no desire for war or conflict, choosing instead to focus on art, culture, and the pursuit of knowledge. But this peaceful existence had left them vulnerable, unprepared for the harshness of the galaxy. I in the vast expanse of the universe, not all species were as kind-hearted as the Exalathians. In fact, many were brutal, always seeking more power, more land, and more control. One such race was the Zirith, a group of ruthless conquerors who showed no mercy to those who stood in their way. The Exalathians, with their lack of military strength, were an easy target. One fateful day, the Zirith invaded Exalath. Their ships appeared in the skies without warning, blocking out the sun with their enormous dark vessels. The Exalathians were terrified. They had no weapons strong enough to fight back, no warriors to defend their cities. The Zirith forces began destroying everything in their path, leaving the Exalathians in chaos. Their peaceful way of life was shattered in an instant. The Exalathians sent out desperate messages for help to the Galactic Council, a group of powerful alien races who maintained order across the stars. The Exalathians had always believed that the Council would protect them in times of need. But to their shock and heartbreak, the Council turned its back on them. "We cannot waste our resources on such a weak race," one of the Council leaders said coldly. "The Exalathians do not offer any value to the galaxy. Let them deal with their own problems." The Exalathians were abandoned. No one cared. Their planet was left to burn, their people left to suffer. They watched as their cities were destroyed, their lands torn apart. For the first time in their history, the Exalathians felt true hopelessness. But across the stars, far from the devastation, there was one race that hadn't yet heard of the Exalathians' plight: humanity. The humans had only recently become a part of the Galactic Council. Though they were new to the wider galaxy, humans had already earned a reputation for being resourceful, brave, and above all, compassionate. Their curiosity about the universe was only matched by their determination to help others, even when it made no sense to do so. The idea of leaving an entire race to die went against everything humans believed in. Captain Sarah Williams sat aboard her ship, the Horizon, listening intently to the latest news coming in from the galactic channels. She was a well-respected officer in the Earth Alliance, known for her strong leadership and unshakable moral compass. When Sarah heard about the Exalathian situation, her heart sank. She couldn't believe that the Galactic Council had refused to help them. How could they just abandon them? Sarah asked aloud, shaking her head in disbelief. She turned to her crew, a diverse group of humans and other species who had joined her in the Earth Alliance's mission to explore and protect. "The Exalathians are defenseless," she continued. "If we don't help them, no one will." One of her officers, Lieutenant Mark Harris, frowned. "Captain, the Zirith are involved. This could be dangerous for us. The Galactic Council doesn't want to get involved, and they've got more resources than we do. Maybe it's not worth the risk." Sarah looked at him, her eyes hard but filled with determination. "That's exactly why we have to do something. If we wait for someone else, it'll be too late." The crew was silent for a moment, considering the situation. Then one by one, they nodded in agreement. They had served under Captain Williams long enough to trust her instincts. If she believed this was the right thing to do, then they would follow her, no matter the risk. "We set course for Exalath immediately," Sarah ordered. The ship made its way through space. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the Exalathians. She imagined what it must be like for them, innocent people trapped on a dying planet, abandoned by those they trusted. The thought only made her more determined to save them. She knew the mission wouldn't be easy. The Zirith were a powerful enemy, and the humans were outmatched in terms of firepower. But humans had something that the Zirith didn't: compassion and the will to fight for what was right. When the Horizon arrived in the Exalath system, the crew was shocked by what they saw. The planet's surface was scorched, with thick smoke rising from destroyed cities. Zirith ships hovered above, continuing their brutal assault. The Exalathians were running out of time. "Send out a distress signal," Sarah commanded. Let the Exalathians know we're here to help. The ship's communication officer, Ensign Maria Chen, quickly sent out the message. It didn't take long for a response to come back. Please, a voice crackled through the speaker. We don't have much time. The Zereth, they're destroying everything. We can't hold on much longer. Sarah's heart raced. We're here. We're going to help you. Just hang on a little longer. But deep down, she knew that they didn't have much time. The Zereth were already beginning to notice the arrival of the human ship, and it wouldn't be long before they attacked. Sarah turned to her crew, her face serious. Prepare for battle. We need to buy the Exalathians enough time to evacuate as many of their people as possible. The crew moved quickly, knowing that their lives and the lives of the Exalathians depended on what they did next. As they prepared to engage the Zereth forces, Sarah couldn't help but think of the words she had spoken earlier. If we don't help them, no one will. The humans were the last hope for the Exalathians, and Sarah wasn't about to let them down. The human ship, the Horizon, cut through the dark space surrounding Exalath. Its sleek metallic hull shimmered under the distant starlight as it approached the planet. Inside, Captain Sarah Williams stood in front of the large window on the bridge, staring at the devastation below. The once beautiful planet, known for its lush landscapes and peaceful people, was now scarred by the destruction left behind by the Zereth. The crew of the Horizon was silent as they observed the chaos. Smoke and fire rose from the Exalathian cities, visible even from space. The Zereth warships hovered like vultures, blasting the surface with energy beams and raining destruction. It was clear the Exalathians had little time left. Captain Williams turned to her crew. We can't wait any longer. We have to act now. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of urgency. The crew had been in many dangerous situations before, but this one felt different. They weren't just fighting to win a battle. They were fighting to save an entire race from extinction. Prepare the rescue shuttles, Sarah ordered. We need to get as many Exalathians off the planet as possible. Lieutenant Mark Harris, her second-in-command, looked worried. Captain, the Zereth will notice us soon. Once we start, we won't have much time. I know, Sarah replied. But we have to try. The crew quickly got to work. The rescue shuttles were small, fast ships designed for getting in and out of dangerous areas. They were equipped with shields and basic weapons, but they weren't built for combat. Their main goal was to pick up survivors and bring them back to the safety of the Horizon. As the crew prepared the shuttles, Ensign Maria Chen, the ship's communication officer, sent out another message to the Exalathians on the planet below. This is Captain Sarah Williams of the Earth Alliance. We are here to help. Please send us your location and we will begin evacuation immediately. For a few tense moments, there was no reply. The crew held their breath, waiting for any sign that the Exalathians were still alive. Then, finally, a faint signal crackled through the speakers. This is Commander Valen of the Exalathian Defense Force. We are under attack. Our people are scattered. We have injured and civilians in need of evacuation. Sarah's heart raced. The Exalathians were still fighting, still holding on, but they were clearly in dire straits. Commander Valen, we are launching shuttles to your location. We'll extract as many of your people as we can, Sarah responded. Thank you. You are our only hope, Valen's voice replied weakly. Sarah turned to Lieutenant Harris. Launch the shuttles. Let's bring them home. The crew sprang into action. 4 shuttles shot out from the horizon, their engines glowing as they sped toward the surface of Exalath. Inside each shuttle, human pilots and medics prepared for the dangerous mission ahead. They knew they were flying into a war zone, but they didn't hesitate. The humans were known for their courage, and this mission would prove it once again. As the shuttles descended through the atmosphere, the crew could see the full extent of the destruction below. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble. Fires burned across the landscape, and the sky was filled with thick, dark smoke. The Zereth warships floated ominously above, continuing their relentless attack. Keep your eyes open, one of the shuttle pilots said over the comms. We don't know when the Zereth might notice us. The shuttles zoomed toward the Exalathians' last known location, a small underground bunker on the edge of a destroyed city. When they arrived, they found the entrance partially collapsed, with desperate Exalathians trying to dig through the rubble to escape. Many of them were injured, their clothes torn and dirty. Their large, round eyes were filled with fear and exhaustion. "We're here to help," one of the human medics shouted as the shuttles landed. The Exalathians stared in disbelief. They had never expected help to arrive, especially not from a species they had only heard rumors about. But as the humans rushed out of the shuttles, carrying medical supplies and helping hands, the Exalathians realized that their prayers had been answered. Thank you," an elderly Exalathian woman whispered, her voice shaking with relief as a human medic helped her onto one of the shuttles. Captain Sarah Williams watched from the command center of the horizon, her eyes fixed on the video feed from the shuttles. The rescue was going smoothly so far, but she knew it wouldn't last. The Zirith would notice their presence soon, and when they did, things would get much more dangerous. As if on cue, the ship's sensors began to blare an alarm. "Captain, we've got incoming Zirith ships," Lieutenant Harris reported. "They've spotted our shuttles." Sarah clenched her fists. "How long until they're in firing range?" 2 minutes, maybe less," Harris replied. "Damn," Sarah muttered under her breath. She couldn't afford to lose the shuttles, not when they had so many Exalathians on board. "Tell the shuttles to hurry up. We're running out of time." The shuttles were already moving as fast as they could, but the extraction process took time. The Exalathians were weak, and many needed help just to walk. The human medics worked quickly, lifting the injured and carrying them to the safety of the shuttles, but it felt like every second was slipping away too fast. Come on, one of the shuttle pilots whispered under his breath as he watched the Zirith ships approaching on his radar. The Zirith ships were much faster and heavily armed, and the humans knew they didn't stand a chance in a direct fight. Suddenly, the ground shook as a Zirith warship fired a massive energy beam at the surface. The explosion sent a shockwave through the area, knocking some of the Exalathians off their feet and causing more rubble to fall from the bunker entrance. "We're out of time," one of the human medics shouted. "We have to go, now." Captain Sarah's voice came through the comms. "Shuttles, return to the horizon immediately. We'll cover you." The shuttles, now full of Exalathian refugees, lifted off the ground and sped back toward the horizon. But the Zirith ships were closing in fast, and it wouldn't be long before they were within firing range. "Prepare the ship's weapons," Sarah ordered. "We need to hold them off long enough for the shuttles to dock." As the shuttles raced toward the safety of the human ship, the horizon opened fire with its laser cannons. Bright blue beams shot through space, forcing the Zirith ships to dodge and weave. It wasn't enough to destroy them. The human medics quickly moved the Exalathians to the ship's medical bay, where doctors were already waiting to treat their wounds. Captain Sarah stood by the docking bay, watching as the last shuttle docked safely. Her crew had done it. They had saved as many Exalathians as they could. But the battle wasn't over yet. "Get us out of here," Sarah commanded. Full speed. The Horizon's engines roared to life as the ship sped away from the planet, leaving the Zirith warships behind. The humans had succeeded in their mission for now. But Sarah knew this was only the beginning. The Exalathians still needed help, and the Zirith wouldn't stop until they were destroyed. As the ship moved through the stars, Sarah allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The humans had arrived just in time to save the Exalathians. But the hardest part of their mission was yet to come. The humans had barely managed to save the Exalathians, and the Horizon was now speeding away from the burning planet. Inside the ship, the rescued Exalathians were being treated by the medics, and Captain Sarah Williams felt a small sense of relief. They had done the impossible, defied the odds, and snatched the alien survivors from certain death. But the relief didn't last long. Sarah stood on the bridge, her eyes locked on the stars in front of her. She knew it was only a matter of time before the Zirith came after them. The humans had interfered in the Zirith's plans, and that was something the ruthless alien empire wouldn't tolerate. "Captain, the Zirith ships are still in pursuit," Lieutenant Mark Harris reported. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of tension beneath it. The situation was about to get worse, and they both knew it. Sarah nodded. "How many?" Harris checked the ship's sensors. At least 3 warships, heavily armed. Sarah took a deep breath. The Horizon was a strong ship, but it wasn't built to fight off 3 Zereth warships, especially not when they were already carrying a ship full of refugees. "Keep the engines at full speed," Sarah ordered. "We need to get as far from Exalith as possible. Maybe we can lose them." Lieutenant Harris didn't look convinced, but he followed her orders. The Horizon accelerated, its powerful engines pushing it further into space. But the Zereth ships weren't backing down. They were closing the distance, their sleek black hulls cutting through the darkness like hunters chasing prey. Down in the medical bay, the rescued Exalithians were in bad shape. Many were injured, their alien bodies bruised and battered from the attacks on their cities. Human doctors moved quickly between them, applying bandages, treating burns, and doing everything they could to stabilize the patients. One of the Exalithians, a tall, thin male with pale blue skin and large, frightened eyes, watched the humans with a mixture of fear and confusion. His name was Valon. He had fought hard to protect his people, but in the end, the Zereth had been too powerful. Now, all he could do was hope that the humans were strong enough to save them. Valon struggled to sit up, his body aching from the injuries he had sustained. A human medic rushed over to help him, gently placing a hand on his shoulder to keep him lying down. "Take it easy," the medic said. "You're still hurt." Valon's voice was weak, but his mind was sharp. "Where are we?" "You're on a human ship. We're getting you away from Exalath," the medic explained. "You're safe for now." Valon nodded slowly, but deep down, he knew the truth. No one was truly safe from the Zereth. Back on the bridge, the situation was becoming more desperate by the minute. The Zereth warships were closing in fast, and it wouldn't be long before they were within firing range. "Captain, they're almost on us," Harris said, his voice filled with concern. Sarah clenched her fists. She knew they couldn't outrun the Zereth forever. If they wanted to survive, they would have to come up with a plan and fast. "Are our shields up?" Sarah asked. "They're at full power, but they won't hold against a direct attack for long," Harris replied. Sarah's mind raced. They couldn't fight the Zereth head-on. Their only hope was to buy time and come up with a way to escape. But how? Then, an idea hit her. "What if we use the nearby asteroid field?" Sarah asked, glancing at the navigation screen. Not far from their current location was a dense field of asteroids, giant, floating rocks that could provide cover from the Zereth ships. Lieutenant Harris looked at the screen and nodded. "It's risky, but it might work. We could hide among the asteroids and use them to block their sensors." Sarah made up her mind. "Do it. Plot a course for the asteroid field." Harris quickly adjusted the ship's course, and the Horizon veered sharply to the right, heading straight for the cluster of large, spinning rocks. The Zereth ships followed, unaware of the humans' plan. As they approached the asteroid field, Sarah could feel the tension in the air. The crew knew that if this plan didn't work, they would be caught and most likely destroyed by the Zereth. "Captain, we're entering the asteroid field," Harris reported as the ship began to weave between the massive rocks. The asteroids were huge, some the size of small moons, and their jagged surfaces glinted in the starlight. Sarah watched the screen as the Zereth ships continued to follow, their sleek black forms cutting through space. But as soon as the human ship entered the asteroid field, the Zereth seemed to hesitate. "They're slowing down," Harris said. "It looks like they're trying to figure out what we're doing." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Zereth might be powerful, but they weren't as familiar with the dangers of asteroid fields as humans were. "Keep us hidden among the asteroids," Sarah instructed. "We need to stay out of their line of sight." The crew carefully maneuvered the Horizon through the field, using the massive rocks as cover. The ship's sensors scanned the area, searching for any sign that the Zereth were closing in. "They're still searching for us," Harris said, his voice calm but focused. "But we've bought ourselves some time." For the first time in hours, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. They had managed to evade the Zereth for now, but she knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, the Zereth would find them, and when they did, the humans would have to be ready. Down in the medical bay, Valon and the other Exalithians were being cared for by the human medics. The Exalathians were amazed by the kindness and skill of their rescuers. Despite everything, the humans hadn't hesitated to help them, even when it put their own lives at risk. Valen, still weak but more alert now, spoke to the medic who was treating him. "Why? Why did you save us?" The medic smiled kindly. "It's what we do. Humans help others, especially those who need it the most." Valen's eyes filled with gratitude. He had never understood humans before. He had heard stories of their strength and bravery, but he had never imagined they would come to the aid of his people. Now, he realized that the humans were not just strong, they were compassionate too. Back on the bridge, Sarah was deep in thought. The asteroid field had bought them time, but they still needed a plan to escape the Zereth once and for all. She knew they couldn't hide forever. "Lieutenant," she said, turning to Harris, "are there any nearby systems where we can find refuge?" Harris scanned the star charts. "There's a small, uninhabited moon a few light years from here. It's far off the main trade routes, and the Zereth might not think to look there." Sarah nodded. "Set a course for the moon. We'll use it as a temporary base while we figure out our next move." As the horizon began to make its way out of the asteroid field, the crew braced themselves for what was to come. The Zereth weren't far behind, and trouble was still looming over them. But for now, they had a plan, and that was more than they had a few minutes ago. Sarah looked out at the vast expanse of space and thought about the Exalathians below deck. They were counting on her and her crew to protect them, and she wasn't going to let them down. The uninhabited moon was small and cold, with jagged mountains and thick clouds of dust swirling across its surface. The horizon landed in a quiet valley, hidden between two tall cliffs. It wasn't the safest place in the galaxy, but for now, it would serve as a temporary refuge from the Zereth. Inside the ship, the mood was tense. The humans knew they had only bought themselves a little time. The Zereth warships could still be searching for them, and sooner or later, they would track them down. But for now, they had other things to worry about. Captain Sarah Williams stood in the main hall, watching as the rescued Exalathians huddled together, still shaken from the chaos of their escape. Many of them were injured, and the medical team was doing everything they could to help. But it wasn't just their physical wounds that concerned Sarah. She could see the fear in their eyes. The Exalathians were scared of the Zereth, of their uncertain future, and perhaps even of the humans themselves. "We need to talk to them," Sarah said quietly to Lieutenant Mark Harris, who was standing beside her. "They're still afraid of us." Harris nodded. "I don't blame them. They've been through a lot. And they don't know much about humans." Sarah sighed. It was true. The Exalathians had never had much contact with humans before. Their worlds were far apart, and they had no reason to interact until now. But if they were going to survive this, they needed to build trust. They couldn't afford to be divided, not with the Zereth still out there. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped forward and approached the group of Exalathians. Valon, the commander of the Exalathian Defense Forces, was sitting with his people. His injuries were healing, but he still looked tired and wary. When he saw Sarah coming, he stiffened slightly, but he didn't look away. "Valon," Sarah said, keeping her voice calm and steady, "we need to talk." Valon's large, dark eyes studied her for a moment. He nodded slowly. "Yes, we do." Sarah gestured for him to follow her, and together they walked to a quieter corner of the hall. The other Exalathians watched them closely, unsure of what to expect. "We don't have much time," Sarah began. "The Zereth will come after us again, and we need to be ready. But more than that, we need to trust each other." Valon looked at her, his expression guarded. "Trust? You speak of trust, but why should we trust humans? We barely know your kind." Sarah didn't flinch. She understood his hesitation. "I know it's hard to trust anyone right now, after everything you've been through. But we didn't come all this way to abandon you. We risked our lives to save your people. And now, we're all in this together." Valon's eyes flickered with doubt, but there was something else there too: curiosity. He hadn't expected the humans to come to their rescue. In fact, he hadn't expected anyone to care about the Exalathians at all. "Why did you save us?" Valon asked, his voice quiet but firm. "You had no reason to get involved. The Zereth, they're too powerful. You could have stayed out of this. Sarah smiled faintly. Maybe we could have. But humans don't work that way. When we see someone in need, we help. It's just what we do. Valon frowned, clearly trying to process this. But the Zirith, they'll destroy you for interfering. Sarah's expression grew serious. Maybe. But we're not going down without a fight. For a moment, Valon was silent. Then he spoke again, his voice softer this time. You're different from what I expected. I've heard stories of humans, your strength, your resilience. But I didn't expect kindness. Sarah smiled again, this time more warmly. There's a lot more to humans than what people hear in stories. Valon nodded slowly, as if finally understanding something that had eluded him. He glanced back at his people, many of whom were still watching from a distance. Then, he turned back to Sarah. If you're willing to fight for us, Valon said, then we will fight alongside you. My people are tired, but we are not without strength. Sarah felt a wave of relief. This was the breakthrough she had been hoping for. Good, she said, because we're going to need every bit of strength we can get. Over the next few hours, the humans and Exalathians began working together, preparing for whatever was to come. The human engineers were busy repairing the Horizon systems, while the Exalathians, under Valon's guidance, began helping wherever they could. Some worked with the humans, learning how the ship's technology functioned, while others gathered what little supplies they had salvaged during the evacuation. As they worked, a sense of camaraderie started to form between the two groups. The humans were impressed by the Exalathians' resilience and determination, and the Exalathians, in turn, began to see the humans not as strangers, but as allies. In the medbay, human doctors continued to treat the injured Exalathians. One of the younger medics, Dr. Emily Chen, was attending to a small Exalathian child with a broken arm. The child's parents watched nervously as Emily carefully set the bone and wrapped it in a protective cast. It's okay, Emily said softly, smiling at the child. You're going to be just fine. The child winced in pain but nodded bravely. His parents exchanged grateful glances with Emily, their fear beginning to melt away. They'd been wary of the humans at first, but now they could see that these strangers were here to help. Elsewhere on the ship, Lieutenant Harris was working with Valon to plan their next move. They needed to stay ahead of the Zirith, but they also had to find a long-term solution. They couldn't run forever. We need to contact the Galactic Council, Harris suggested. If they know what the Zirith are doing to your people, they might step in. Valon looked doubtful. The Galactic Council? They've turned their backs on us before. Why would they help now? Harris frowned. Maybe they won't, but it's worth a try. If we can gather enough evidence of the Zirith's attacks, they might be forced to act. Valon thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. You may be right. It's a long shot, but it's the only chance we have. As the hours passed, the bond between the humans and Exalathians grew stronger. They shared meals together, told stories of their home planets, and even laughed despite the danger still looming over them. For the first time in a long while, the Exalathians felt a sense of hope. Sarah watched all of this from the sidelines, her heart swelling with pride. She had always believed in the power of unity, and now she was seeing it in action. The humans and Exalathians were different in many ways, but in the end, they had one thing in common, the will to survive. By the end of the day, the ship was as ready as it could be. Repairs had been made, and the crew was prepared for the next phase of their journey. But more importantly, trust had been built between the humans and the Exalathians. They were no longer strangers. They were allies, united by a common enemy and a shared goal. As Sarah stood on the bridge, looking out at the vast expanse of space, she knew that they were still far from safe. The Zirath were out there, and they wouldn't stop until they had wiped out every last Exalathian. But now, they weren't facing the Zirith alone. Together, humans and Exalathians would stand and fight. And in that fight, trust was their greatest weapon. The time had come. The moment everyone on the horizon had been preparing for was here. Sarah Williams stood on the bridge of the human ship, looking out at the vast, star-filled void before her. Just beyond the horizon, the Zirith fleet waited. Their ships were massive and menacing, shimmering with the cold light of the distant sun. They had tracked the humans and Exalathians to this hidden moon, and now they were preparing for the final strike. But Sarah wasn't afraid. Beside her, Valon, the Exalathian leader, stood tall, his eyes fierce with determination. The humans had risked everything to save his people, and now they would fight together. It was something no one had expected, a small, nearly extinct race and a group of daring humans standing together against one of the most feared forces in the galaxy. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, her voice steady but firm. Valon nodded. "We're ready." Around them, the crew worked quickly, preparing the ship for battle. Engineers checked the shields, gunners calibrated the weapons, and the tactical officers studied the approaching Zereth fleet, looking for any weakness they could exploit. "We don't have much time," Lieutenant Mark Harris said as he approached Sarah. "They'll be in firing range in minutes." Sarah nodded, her expression unreadable. "Then we make sure we're ready when they are." She turned to Valon, who had been quietly communicating with his own people. The Exalathians, though small in number, were determined to fight. They had been preparing too, modifying the small weapons and tools they had brought from their ruined planet. It wasn't much compared to the firepower of the Zereth, but it would have to be enough. "We'll hit them with everything we've got," Valon said. "It may not be enough to destroy them, but we can buy time." Sarah smiled faintly. "Time is all we need." There was a plan risky, dangerous, and almost impossible, but it was the only chance they had. The humans had been studying the Zereth fleet, looking for any advantage they could find. And they had discovered one: the Zereth's main battleships were powerful but slow. If they could lure them into a trap, there was a chance they could cripple their command ship. Leaving the rest of the fleet in chaos.it was a long shot, but it was all they had. "Everyone to battle stations," Sarah commanded, her voice echoing through the ship's comm system. "This is it. Stay sharp and trust each other. We can win this." As the crew scrambled to their positions, Valon returned to his people. He spoke quickly and quietly, rallying them for the coming fight. Many of the Exalathians had never been in a real battle before, but they were ready to defend their race, no matter the cost. The Zereth ships loomed closer, their dark, angular forms blotting out the stars. Sarah could feel the tension building in the air. This was going to be a fight unlike any she'd ever faced. But she wasn't alone. Her crew, Valon's people, and the spirit of humanity were all with her. The first shot was fired. A massive beam of energy shot from one of the Zereth battleships, aimed directly at the horizon. But the human ship's shields held, absorbing the blow with a bright flash of light. "Shields holding at 80%, Harris reported from his station. "We can't take too many hits like that." "Don't worry," Sarah replied. "We won't have to." She turned to the helmsman. "Take us closer. We need to get them into the trap." The ship lurched forward, speeding toward the enemy fleet. The Zereth, confident in their superior firepower, followed, firing shot after shot at the fleeing human ship. Each hit rocked the hull, but the horizon pressed on, leading the Zereth deeper into the asteroid field surrounding the moon.it. Was there that the humans' trap lay waiting. As the horizon flew between the rocky asteroids, the Zereth ships slowed, their massive size making it difficult for them to navigate through the debris. Sarah watched carefully as the Zereth command ship, the largest of them all, moved closer. "Now," she shouted. Valon and his people sprang into action. Using the small, fast ships they had managed to salvage, the Exalathians launched a surprise attack on the Zereth fleet. They darted through the asteroid field, using their speed and agility to their advantage. The Zereth ships, caught off guard, struggled to respond. Sarah smiled grimly. "Good job, Valon." But it wasn't over yet. With the Zereth fleet distracted by the Exalathian attack, the horizon made its move. Sarah directed the ship straight toward the Zereth command ship. It was a bold and dangerous maneuver, but if they could disable the command ship, the rest of the fleet would be in disarray. "Prepare the EMP," Sarah ordered. "We only get one shot at this." The humans had modified one of their weapons to create an electromagnetic pulse, powerful enough to knock out the electronics on the Zereth ship. But to use it, they had to get dangerously close. The ship shuddered as more enemy fire hit the shields. Harris looked up from his console, his face tense. Shields at 30%. We're almost there, Sarah said through gritted teeth. Just hold on a little longer. Finally, they were close enough. The massive Zareth command ship filled the view screen, its guns still firing at the Exalathians. They hadn't noticed the horizon slipping into position. Fire the EMP! Sarah shouted. A burst of energy shot from the horizon, striking the Zareth command ship. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, the Zareth ship flickered, its lights going dark, and its weapons stopped firing. "We did it!" Harris exclaimed, his voice full of relief. But there was no time to celebrate. The rest of the Zareth fleet, now leaderless, began to panic. Some ships tried to flee, while others fired wildly in all directions. The Exalathians, emboldened by their success, pressed their attack, disabling several more ships. "Let's finish this," Sarah said, her voice steady. Together, the humans and Exalathians launched a final assault on the remaining Zareth ships. One by one, the once mighty fleet that had terrorized the Exalathians was now in ruins. As the last of the Zareth ships fled, Sarah leaned back in her chair, exhausted but triumphant. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won. Valen approached her, his expression full of gratitude. "We couldn't have done this without you, Captain Williams. Your people saved us." Sarah smiled. "We saved each other, Valen. That's what allies do." The battle was over, but the war wasn't. The Zareth would regroup and come back, and there were still many challenges ahead. But for now, the humans and Exalathians had won a great victory together. And as they stood on the bridge of the horizon, looking out at the stars, they knew that no matter what came next, they would face it as one.